Hello, I'm Gil Zilkha, and welcome to my channel. This is my series entitled Essential Classical Music, where we look at the best recordings of the major classical music works. This video is taken out of my larger video where I cover the major concerto recordings. And if you enjoy this, I hope you'll take the time to also watch that larger one. Just know that you don't have to watch the entire thing in one big long take. It is divided into chapters, so it's really easy to just click through and view whichever work you're curious about. So I hope you enjoy it. And now we're going to move to Beethoven's masterpiece for the Violin Concerto. This is one of the great, of course, violin concerto pieces. It's a very, very noble, very, very sort of dignified concerto. It's not what I would say is sort of a virtuosic showpiece, even though the final movement has a lot of energy and spirit. It's a really a probing, almost kind of ruminative concerto. And my first choice for this comes from, if I can find it here, one of the great violinists of the 20th century. We just talked about him a little bit earlier with Bach, David Oistrakh. This is a recording with André Cluton and the French Radio National Orchestra from 1958. And Oistrakh brings the qualities of not just being a virtuoso and having this beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous, warm tone and just this smooth, beautiful legato, but he's also very much a thinking person's violinist, very, very ruminative. He also, for this concerto, I think one thing that's really good from Oistrakh is that he never lets things get out of hand. It's a very grounded interpretation, which really helps, I think, the concerto do its magic. So that's my first choice, but there are many more. Another thinking artist, a little bit later in time, this is an early digital recording. This is Itzhak Perlman with Carlo Maria Giuliani and the Chicago Symphony from 1980. This is one of the most, famous Beethoven Violin Concerto recordings. Perlman brings the heart and the soul and the sweetness of tone. And then the combination with Giuliani is just wonderful. So this is a justly famous recording of the Beethoven Concerto. Going back a little bit further in time, this is from 1962. This is Wolfgang Schneiderhan, accompanied by another great Beethoven conductor, Eugen Jochum. This is with the Berlin Philharmonic, very well recorded. And Schneiderhan is a little bit more maybe extrovert, I would say, compared to Oistrakh and Perlman in this piece. Very expressive, very beautiful. It's a very heartfelt performance, and the combination with Jochum, I would say that they're both just very natural. And it's another classic Beethoven concerto recording. Now going back further in time, and this is towards now modern recordings, is Yehudi Menuhin, and this is a famous classic collaboration with the great Beethoven conductor Wilhelm Furtwängler with the Philharmonia from 1953. And one little backstory is that Furtwängler went through a denazification process after World War II, and it came out that he had assisted Jews in escaping, and there was a lot of controversy around him for his having stayed in Germany during the war. Well, one person who came to his defense was Yehudi Menuhin, the Jewish violinist. And sort of a show of solidarity is that he performed the Beethoven Concerto with Furtwängler shortly after the war. There's a really good live recording with the Berlin Philharmonic from 1947 that you can find, for example, in the Audite box set of Furtwängler, his live Berlin recordings, which is really good, as well as a recording with the Lucerne Festival Orchestra. I think I think this one, though, is still the one to start with. This is, again, from 1953. It's a pretty good mono, and it's just a beautiful, heartfelt rendering of the work with these two great artists. And Fort Vanguard's, he brings his artistry and his power to the piece, so you're going to want to hear this one. Now, going back a little further, this is a live recording from Adolf Busch with his brother conducting, Fritz Busch. He's conducting the New York Philharmonic. This is a live recording from Carnegie Hall made in 1942. And this is just a really powerful performance with another great artist that Busch was. It's a little bit more sort of rough, I would say. It's got that Beethoven power to it. And the orchestra under Fritz Busch also really brings home that power. So it's a little bit rough. The sound is, again, it's a live recording, but if you love the Beethoven Concerto, I would say this is one that you should seek out. Now, we also have some classic early recordings from some of the great violinists of the 20th century, and one that you just cannot leave out, of course, is Jascha Heifetz. Now, Heifetz recorded a version of the Beethoven Concerto that it's often coupled with the Mendelssohn because they were under the same conductor, Charles Munch, in stereo. A lot of people laud that performance. It's definitely one of the most famous recordings, and you should seek it out. In my opinion, sometimes in Heifetz's later recordings, even though you get to hear him in clear, really great sound, it sounds to me like he knows the piece so well and he can play it so quickly that he kind of whizzes through it. And for me, the work, even though I admire what Heifetz is doing, I am in awe of Heifetz himself, I feel like the actual concerto loses a little bit of its artistic power. And so for me, in this concerto, for example, I think his earlier recording, this is with Toscanini and the NBC Symphony in 1940, I think here you hear a little bit more of, I would say, commitment, a little bit more passion and drama, and the music actually breathes just a bit more here. There's a wonderful hushed intensity to the playing, and again, it's also a conductor's piece as well. And so the combination of Heifetz and Toscanini is just really wonderful. You probably should at least seek out and listen to the Munch. Again, mine is a sort of a minority opinion, perhaps. A lot of people swear by that recording. It's just not completely my cup of tea, personally. Now, you want to hear some really great artistry. Let's talk about Bronislaw Huberman. This is a 1934 recording, a studio recording that actually sounds really good for its time, accompanied by George Zell and the Vienna Philharmonic. Now, you can actually get it in these historic recordings are so often issued and reissued. You can also get this in a Naxos edition, and I have them both because the couplings are both just really great as well. This one you get the Kreutzer Sonata with Ignaz Friedman, which is fantastic. But then this one you get the Tchaikovsky Concerto, which we're going to come to later, which is also essential. And then there's also Pristine has put this recording out. Pristine has their own website. They don't go through like Amazon, but you can get either digital downloads or you can have a physical copy mailed to you. Pristine is kind of what it says. It's taking the old historical recordings and making them sound as pristine as possible, and they do a fabulous job. But for now, I'm going to recommend these two fairly good quality recordings. And Huberman was just a really individual, expressive artist, wonderful imagination. He was a childhood prodigy, and he could do anything on the violin. But the thing is that he was never bringing attention to the virtuosity for its own sake. He was an artist first, and he just immersed himself in the works that he performed, and these are wonderful. It's actually a little bit on maybe surprisingly maybe the faster side as a basic tempo, and that may be partly because of Zell's interpretive choices. So it's a very sort of flowing interpretation, but it's just beautiful. Now, for something that's maybe not as flowing and much older, we have another king of violinists, literally, Fritz Kreisler. This is a famous old recording from 1926 with Leo Blech and the Berlin State Opera Orchestra. And Kreisler was another one of those performers who was an artist first. And this is just oozing with humanity and artistry, and that first movement has so many moments that are sort of hushed and contemplative, and he just does a beautiful job with that. You really hear more the violin here than you hear the orchestra. The orchestra is rather dim. It's 1926, so it's obviously not a primary choice for that reason. But if you love the Beethoven Violin Concerto, for me, Fritz Kreisler's artistry is just essential. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, I hope you'll also take time to click the like and subscribe buttons. And with that, I want to wish you all a great day and happy listening.